Hello. Welcome. Today we are going to study the Old English period, which actually spans from 450 to 1066 AD. But today we are going to study from 450 to 900 AD, which includes both the early Old English and the High Old English period. The Old English period marks the beginning of English literature. It reflects a powerful warrior society, a strong oral tradition, and a great gradual transition from the pagan beliefs to Christian influences. Understanding this period will help us understand the roots of English literary tradition. Let's see the historical background. The Old English period begins in and around 450 AD after the Romans withdrew from Britain in 410 AD. Following this withdrawal, three Germanic tribes, namely the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes, migrated to England. These groups formed tribal kingdoms all across England, which are collectively called as the Heptarchy, the Seven Kingdoms. Their society was not centralized, they are not united, but divided into small kingdoms ruled by warrior kings. This was a heroic and tribal society deeply rooted in warfare, royalty, and the Anglo-Saxon society was based on commutative system, the combination system, as we know it now. This was a sacred bond between the king, who is often called as the ring giver, and his warrior, the Thanes. The king provides protection, wealth, and gifts to the warrior, while the warrior provides military service, loyalty, and absolute devotion towards his master. The loyalty was the highest virtue in this time period. If a warrior lost his lord, he has lost his social identity. The exile meant not only physical separation but also emotional and social death. Early Old English society followed pagan beliefs. They believed in the meaning of fate. To them, fate controlled everybody's life and death, which is also unavoidable. Even the bravest warrior could not escape their destiny. This belief created a strong sense of tragic awareness in their poetry. But in 597 AD, Christianity began spreading in England through missionaries such as Saint Augustine. Gradually, monasteries were established, literacy increased, but the Christian values entered their literature. However, pagan beliefs did not disappear completely. Instead, the Old English period literature combines with the Christian tradition and the pagan tradition. The pagan heroism and Christian moralism blended together to form the very important poetry that we know as the Anglo-Saxon poetry. The Old English literature was originally oral. It was performed by a spoke or bard in a mead hall. Mead hall is an open hall where the um, poet sings his song. The poetry had specific features. First, alliteration, which is the repetition of consonant sounds instead of rhyme, which we are accustomed to now. The second is the use of kennings, which are the compound metaphor-like word. For example, Vale Road represents sea, whereas the bone house represents body. The third is a strong heroic tone celebrating courage and loyalty. This literature was meant to be heard and not read. Now let's focus on the early Old English phase. This period is mainly characterized by oral historic poetry, strong pagan themes, and one of the earliest surviving work, which is Cardamom's Hymn. This poem is significant because it is the first recorded English poem. It praises God as a creator, showing the beginning of the Christian influence in English poetry. However, its poetic style is still on the Anglo-Saxon structure. This shows that the merging of the culture is beginning. Now we can move on to the High Old English period, which can be called as the golden age of Old English poetry. During this time, the literature becomes richer and much more complex. The most important work of this period is Beowulf. It is the greatest surviving epic poem in Old English literature even as of now. It tells the story of a heroic warrior who fights Grendel and Grendel's mother, who both were, by the way, are monsters, and later, by the end of his time, he fights a dragon. The poem explores heroism, fate, loyalty, mortality, and all such things. It combines pagan warrior idols with Christian reflections of life and death. Another important poem of this period is The Dream of Roar. This poem represents Christ as a heroic warrior. The cross itself could speak, and it describes itself as it is so loyal to the Christ. Here we can see clearly how Christian themes are expressed using Germanic heroic language. During this period, we see the development of elegiac poetry. These poems are much more personal and introspective. Some of the poems include The Wanderer, The Seafarer, Dear, The Wife's Lament, and The Husband's Message, which is a companion work to The Wife's Lament. These poems focus on the exile, loneliness, loss, and the passing of glory. But the common theme in all these poems is the idea of transience, that is, all thing that is glorious will fade. Across the entire period, we can see some recurring themes. First is heroism, which is bravery in battle. The second is fate, the inevitable death. Third, we come across loyalty, which is the sacred bond between the Lord and his warrior. The fame, the desire to be remembered. And fifth, the exile, which is the pain of being forgotten. And finally, mortality, the awareness that everything comes to an end. The Old English period from 450 to 900 is significant because it laid foundation for English literature. It preserved Germanic culture in poetic form. Though it has some transition from paganism to Christianity, it established the epic and elegiac tradition that influenced later English writers. To conclude, the Old English period is a time of heroic warriors, oral poetry, cultural transformation, deep reflection on fate and morality. It is not simply primitive literature. It is a powerful structure and it is philosophically rich. Even today, it's the theme of courage, loyalty, and human fragility remains relevant. And that is why the Old English period remains essential to the study of English literature.